Why was she the only one left standing at the edge of the briefing table, her shadow stretched longer than anyone else? The others had taken their seats, shuffling papers, sipping burned coffee, murmuring about maps and weather. But her silence carried something heavier than any storm outside. No one asked why. No one ever did. The colonel's voice echoed against the concrete walls, clipped in certain coordinates, extraction windows, satellite drift, but she wasn't listening, not fully, not yet. Her eyes were fixed on the grainy black-and-white photograph pinned to the far wall. A village, broken roofs, a dirt road cutting through the middle like a scar. She'd seen it before, long before this mission had a name. She didn't move, not when his voice rose, not when the room chuckled at a dry joke about supply shortages. She only shifted when one of the men leaned too close, his elbow brushing her sleeve. He didn't notice, but she did. Every detail, every touch, every sound. Years of training made it impossible not to. "Do you understand your role, Lieutenant Vale?" The colonel finally looked at her. A pause hung there, more loaded than his question. She nodded once, sharp, controlled. But inside something cracked open. Not fear, not even doubt, just the reminder of what wasn't said, what they didn't know. When the room emptied, boots scraping, laughter spilling into the hallway, she lingered. The photograph was still there, curling at the edges under the thumbtack. She stepped closer. The village blurred in her vision. Memory pressed hard. A sound rose from deep inside her chest but never escaped her lips. They thought it was just another mission. She knew better. Outside, the air was colder than expected. Sharp winds sliced down the runway, carrying jet fuel, oil, dust. She pulled her jacket tighter, though the chill came from something else. Engines roared, helicopters thudded in distant rhythm. The world never stopped moving, but inside she felt frozen, as if time itself was watching her too closely. She found a quiet spot near the hangar, away from the chatter, and lit a cigarette. She didn't smoke often, not anymore. But sometimes the flame, the taste of ash, reminded her she was still here, still human. She exhaled slowly, watching the smoke twist into the night like a signal no one would ever read. Her hand trembled only once, when she reached for the locket under her collar, small, tarnished. A face inside she hadn't looked at in months, not because she forgot, because remembering hurt more than forgetting. Footsteps broke the silence. Heavy, deliberate. She tucked the locket back, straightened, masked the moment. "You're Vale, right?" A young sergeant. His accent gave him away, Midwest maybe. He held his helmet under his arm, trying to look casual, but his eyes betrayed him. Nervous, searching. She didn't answer, not directly. Just flicked the cigarette away, sparks dying in the wind. He shifted, "First time with us." A pause. "No," she finally said. One word, enough to close the door on his curiosity. But the sergeant didn't walk away. Instead, he looked toward the runway as if he couldn't stand the weight of her silence. "My kid turned 3 last week. I wasn't there." His voice cracked just a little. "She sent me a video, cake, balloons. You'd think it would make me feel closer, but it just," he shook his head, "made me feel further." Vale said nothing. She didn't need to. His words weren't meant for her, just for the air, for himself. He finally forced a grin, nodding once before stepping back toward the noise of the hangar. When he was gone, she let herself breathe again. Sometimes the heaviest burdens weren't the ones she carried, but the ones she accidentally caught from others. And still, she said nothing. Hours later, she was on the transport. The cabin hummed with restrained nerves. Men dozed with rifles strapped across their chests. Someone whispered a prayer, lips barely moving. Another fiddled with a wedding band, twisting it around his finger until his skin reddened. Vale sat near the back, head tilted against the cold metal wall, eyes half shut but never closed. She felt every vibration through her spine. The air tasted like oil, sweat, and anticipation. She thought of the village again, the dirt road, the broken roofs, the sound that haunted her more than any explosion, a scream, but not of pain, of recognition. Her breath hitched, but she caught it, burying it in the drone of the engines. The mission brief said simple recon. In and out. But nothing was ever simple. Not when her past bled into their present. Not when the lines blurred so easily between orders and obsessions. When the red light above the cabin door began to blink, chatter stopped. Silence spread like smoke. Every face hardened. Every hand tightened. Vale touched the edge of her glove, pulling it tighter. Focus, control, one last breath. The ramp dropped, wind screamed in, dust and light swallowed them whole. And as boots thundered onto foreign soil, she told herself the same lie she'd carried for years. This wasn't personal. But deep inside, she knew it always was. The village lay hours away, and the march through the barren landscape tested every step. The ground crunched under their weight, dry earth breaking like bones. The horizon burned in shades of rust and gold, the sun pressing low, unforgiving. One of the men cursed under his breath when his pack shifted wrong. Another spat into the dirt. Their voices carried, but Vale's didn't join. She walked in silence, scanning ridges, shadows, the way the wind cut differently when it moved around stone. She noticed everything, always. A captain walked beside her, taller, broad-shouldered, trying to match her pace. "You don't say much, do you?" His voice was calm, practiced, like he'd led too many patrols to count. She kept her eyes forward. He smirked faintly, not unkind. "That's all right. Talking doesn't keep you alive, listening does." She almost answered, almost, but something in the distance stole her words, a flicker on the ridge, too sharp, too deliberate. Her hand lifted, instinctively signaling a halt. The patrol froze. A silence heavier than stone crushed the air. Vale's breath slowed. She crouched, studying the ridge. Dust shifted where it shouldn't. Shadows clung too tight. Someone was there, watching, waiting. The captain followed her gaze. His jaw tightened. The moment stretched, then snapped. A bird startled from the ridge, wings cracking against the air. For a heartbeat, everyone expected gunfire. None came. The captain exhaled low. Good eyes. Vale said nothing, but inside her chest burned. That ridge, that road leading up to the village. She remembered it all too well, not from maps, from memory, from a day she never spoke of. As the patrol moved on, the weight in her steps deepened. She wasn't just walking toward a mission. She was walking back into her own past. And no one else knew, not yet. By the time the sun bled into night, their camp flickered with the dim glow of chemical lamps. The men ate in silence, chewing rations that tasted more of cardboard than food. Someone cracked a joke about missing real coffee. Laughter followed, too loud, too brief. Vale sat on the edge of the circle, her rifle across her knees. She chewed slowly, swallowing more memory than food. The sergeant from earlier, the one with the child's birthday video, caught her eye. He hesitated, then sat nearby, breaking open his own packet. "You know," he said quietly, "my wife asked me once why I keep coming back here. I didn't have a good answer." Vale looked at him, her face unreadable. He stared into the darkness beyond the camp. "Sometimes I think, maybe we all come back because leaving feels worse. Like if we stop, everything we lost, everything we did, it all means nothing." His voice trailed off. He didn't expect her to respond, and she didn't, but the words stuck inside her anyway, pressing against her ribs. That night sleep came in fragments. She lay awake, staring at the torn canvas above her, listening to the rhythm of breathing around her. Men shifting, coughing, murmuring in their sleep. A storm gathered far away, thunder rolling like drums across the desert. She turned the locket in her palm, pressing it so hard the edges bit her skin. When she finally drifted off, the dreams came. Not dreams, memories. The village, the dirt road, the scream, a hand reaching, her own hand failing to hold on. She woke with a start, breath ragged, sweat cold. The lamps had burned out. Only the pale slice of moonlight touched her face. She sat up slowly, rifle close, scanning shadows. But the only enemy was the past. And yet, as the wind howled across the camp, She couldn't shake the feeling that someone, something, was waiting for her to return. And this time it would not be silent. What did she see in the distance that made her stop mid-step? The morning air was heavy with dust, the horizon blurred, but her eyes caught it, a shimmer, faint, almost nothing. Yet nothing was exactly what didn't belong here. The squad moved behind her, restless, tired, weighed down by gear and silence. The captain followed her gaze, lips tightening. He didn't ask out loud. He didn't need to, he knew that look. Something was wrong. "Eyes up," he muttered to the others. "Stay sharp." Vale crouched, scanning the slope ahead. The desert stretched endlessly, but a ridge carved against the light like a blade. Something about it, the way it angled, the way the dust shifted in subtle patterns, made her pulse climb. She remembered this slope, not from maps, not from satellite images, from standing on it before, years ago, too close, too raw. She didn't tell them, not yet. Instead, she moved forward, every step measured, every breath steady, her senses stretched thin. The silence wasn't natural. No insects, no wind through grass, just stillness. Then a crack, not gunfire, rock breaking under weight. Her hand shot up, the patrol froze instantly, weapons raised, eyes darting. Another sound, small, intentional, like someone retreating into shadow. "Movement," Vale whispered. Her voice was low, certain, final. The captain signaled 2 men to flank, their boots crunching, soft, slow, deliberate. The squad spread, rifles trained on empty ridges. Minutes bled. The silence pressed harder. Whoever was there was gone now, watching from somewhere else, waiting. The captain exhaled. "They know we're here." Vale didn't reply. She kept her rifle aimed on the slope. Her finger curled, but she didn't fire. Inside, she heard a sound again, not from the ridge, but from memory. The echo of that village road. The scream. A face turning toward her before it vanished into smoke. Her chest tightened. She blinked it away, lowering her weapon, but the unease stayed like a splinter under skin. By afternoon, the sun burned mercilessly overhead. Heat waves rippled off the ground, blinding. They marched in silence, beads of sweat carving paths through dust on their skin. The pack straps cut deep into shoulders, mouths dry, tongues heavy. But no one complained. Complaints meant weakness. Weakness meant distraction. Vale walked slightly ahead, her posture rigid, her eyes scanning every ridge, every abandoned track. The desert wasn't empty. It never was. It just pretended well. Behind her, the sergeant, the one who spoke of his daughter, stumbled briefly, catching himself with a muttered curse. She glanced back, her eyes locking with his. Just a second, but enough. He nodded faintly as if to say, "I'm fine." And yet in that look she saw the weight he carried. The way he shifted his jaw, the way his hand gripped his rifle tighter than needed. Fear wasn't absent. It was always there. It just wore different masks. Hours later, the silhouette of the village rose on the horizon. Crumbled walls, shattered roofs, a skeleton of a place standing because it had nowhere else to fall. The squad slowed, weapons lifted, conversations died completely. Vale's breath caught, shallow, sharp. The dirt road stretched into view, the same one from the photo, the same one from her memory. Each step toward it felt heavier, like walking into a grave. "Eyes open," the captain said. His voice was calm, but his hand twitched near his weapon. The village loomed closer. Silence thickened. Even the wind seemed to avoid it. They entered through what once might have been a gate. Now it was just broken wood, half buried in sand. The smell hit them first, not fresh death, but old. Smoke soaked into stone, rusted metal, ash that never left. Boots crunched over shattered glass, broken pottery, fragments of lives abandoned too quickly. Vale's eyes scanned everything. The doorway where she once stood, the alley where she once ran, the window where a face had appeared just for a second before everything collapsed. Her throat tightened. She wanted to look away but couldn't. "Clear left," someone whispered. "Clear right." The squad spread through the village, rifles raised, checking corners, rooftops, shadows. No movement, no sound, just emptiness holding its breath. Vale moved slowly, every step measured. She passed a wall scorched black, her fingers brushing it lightly. Ash flaked under her glove. The memory surged, the roar of fire, the choking smoke, the frantic voices calling names. She pulled her hand back as if burned. The sergeant caught up beside her, whispering, "Feels like ghosts are watching." She didn't answer, because he was right. At the center of the village, the squad regrouped. The captain crouched near an old well, scanning the map. "We set surveillance here, 2 hours, then we move." Vale kept her eyes on the rooftops. She didn't trust the silence. Silence was never neutral. It was always either mercy or warning. She felt it in her bones. This place wasn't empty. While the others settled, she walked away, her boots dragging through dust. Past a doorway where a child's toy still lay, a small wooden cart, wheel broken, untouched for years. She stared at it, her chest tight, before forcing herself onward. She stopped near a half-collapsed building. Rubble, twisted beams, fragments of fabric caught on stone. And beneath it, the faintest mark scratched into the wall, initials. Familiar, too familiar. Her breath faltered. She touched it, just once. The edges of the letters still sharp despite years of weather. Her eyes stung, though the air was dry. She pulled her hand back quickly, glancing over her shoulder. No one saw. Good. They couldn't know. Not yet. The squad didn't need her ghosts. They had their own. As dusk crept in, shadows stretched across the village like fingers reaching for them. The men whispered quietly, trading stories to fight the weight of silence. One spoke of home, a cabin near a lake, the smell of pine, the way water glowed under moonlight. Another spoke of regret, a friend he'd lost on patrol, a joke left unfinished, a promise never kept. Their words filled the air with fragments of humanity, fragile, fleeting. Vale listened but didn't join. Her story was carved too deep to share. The captain approached her as night settled. His face was hard, but his tone was, "You've been here before." Her chest tightened. "No." His eyes lingered. He didn't believe her, but he didn't press. Instead, he simply said, "Stay sharp tonight. They'll come when it's dark." And he was right. The first sound came hours later, a rustle too deliberate to be the wind, a shuffle on stone. Vale's eyes snapped open. She'd barely slept. She gripped her rifle, scanning the rooftops. A shape flickered, gone before focus caught it. Then another. "Movement," she hissed. The squad jolted awake, weapons raised, eyes sharp. Shadows darted along rooftops, swift, precise. Gunfire cracked, echoes tore the silence apart. Bullets shattered stone, sparks exploding against metal. The squad dove for cover, returning fire into darkness. Vale pressed against a wall, breath steady, eyes scanning. Muzzle flashes cut the night, revealing fleeting silhouettes. Fast, familiar, her chest clenched. These weren't strangers. She knew the way they moved. A round slammed into the wall near her head, showering dust. She didn't flinch. She rolled to the side, returning fire, each shot calculated, controlled. The sergeant yelled from cover, voice sharp with fear. "They're surrounding us." The captain barked orders, voice cutting through chaos. "Hold positions, watch the rooftops." Vale fired again, her eyes catching the glint of something, not a rifle, not a weapon. A pendant, swinging from the neck of one of the shadows. Her breath caught mid-fire. Recognition slammed into her chest like a blow. No, it couldn't be. But it was. Her hands shook for the first time in years. The firefight raged, bullets screamed, stone cracked, men shouted. And Vale stood frozen, her rifle aimed but her heart breaking, because in that single glint of moonlight, she realized the truth she'd buried under silence. This wasn't just another mission. This was home. And the people shooting at her weren't just enemies. They were the ones she once loved. How do you aim your weapon at shadows when one of them wears the memory of your own blood? Vale's finger tightened on the trigger, but she couldn't pull. Not yet. Her breath came shallow, uneven, drowned by the rattle of gunfire all around her. The squad shouted, scrambled, fought to hold the village center, but her world had narrowed to that single glint of moonlight, the pendant swinging against a chest that moved with precision she knew too well. A round ricocheted near her boots, spraying shards of stone into her leg. Pain stung, hot and sharp. She blinked hard, forcing her body back into the fight. She couldn't freeze, not now. "Cover the north wall," the captain's voice roared over the chaos. Vale shifted, pressing herself behind the broken edge of a well. Her rifle steadied, scope catching flickers of movement between rooftops. She fired once, twice, watching shadows scatter. Her shots were clean, efficient, buying seconds of silence, but her heart knew what her mind refused to admit. The way they moved, the way they covered each other, this wasn't random. These weren't strangers. These were people trained the same way she had been. Her people. The sergeant dropped beside her, panting, reloading with shaking hands. Dust smeared across his face, his eyes wide with fear that hadn't yet cracked into panic. "They're everywhere," he gasped. Vale's jaw clenched. "Not everywhere, just where we can't see." He looked at her, startled by the calm in her voice. But calm wasn't what she felt. Inside, her chest was breaking, piece by piece. Gunfire tore the night again. Muzzle flashes bloomed like lightning against stone. One of their men cried out, collapsing near the well, clutching his shoulder. Blood seeped fast, too fast. Vale dropped her rifle, dragged him back into cover, pressing her hand hard against the wound. His eyes locked on hers, wide, glassy. "Am I?" "No," her voice cut sharp, certain, leaving no room for doubt. "You're not." He nodded, teeth clenched, trusting her more than the words themselves. The captain slid beside them, barking for a medic, but Vale already had the bleeding under control. She didn't look up when he spoke, didn't explain how she knew exactly what to do. Some habits never left you. Some memories of tending wounds long before this night still lingered, uninvited. Another burst of gunfire rattled. The sergeant leaned out, returning fire, his jaw tight. He yelled, "We're pinned here. They'll cut us down if we don't move." The captain cursed under his breath, checking his watch, calculating options. But Vale's eyes weren't on him. They were locked on the rooftops again, on the shadow with the pendant. She followed his path, the way he shifted, the way he aimed without hesitation. Her breath caught. She knew him, not just as an enemy, not as a stranger. She knew him like she knew her own reflection. Her chest constricted. She blinked hard, forcing the thought down. This wasn't the time, couldn't be. But the truth pressed harder, louder than the gunfire. He was alive. The man she thought gone, buried, lost to fire. Alive. And aiming at her. The firefight dragged for what felt like hours, though the clock ticked minutes. The attackers didn't press too close. They stayed in shadows, testing, probing, reminding them that this village belonged to someone else. When the gunfire finally ebbed, silence returned heavy and thick. The squad held their positions, eyes sharp, breaths ragged. The night was alive with ghosts, even when the shooting stopped. The captain leaned against the well, wiping sweat from his brow. His face was hard, but his voice dropped low, meant for Vale alone. "You've been here before. I can see it. What aren't you telling me?" Her throat tightened. Words clawed to escape, but she locked them down. "Does it matter?" His eyes narrowed. "It will if it gets us killed." She stared at him, unflinching, until he looked away first. But inside, his words sliced her. Because he was right. And because she wasn't sure which truth hurt more, that her silence endangered them, or that her silence was the only thing holding her together. The squad rotated watches through the night, exhaustion dragging at their shoulders. Vale sat awake, eyes fixed on the rooftops, the locket warm in her hand beneath the glove. She turned it once, twice, the edges biting her skin. When the sergeant slid down beside her, breaking the silence, she almost told him. Almost. Instead, he whispered, "I saw you out there, the way you didn't flinch when the bullets hit, like you've been in worse." Vale didn't answer. He exhaled, resting his head against the wall. Sometimes I think the hardest part isn't fighting, it's carrying the pieces of yourself that don't come back. His voice cracked just slightly. I don't want my daughter to see that version of me one day. She turned her head, watching him in the faint moonlight. His face was young, too young to already sound that old. You fight, she said softly, her first words in hours, so she doesn't have to. His eyes met hers. For a second, gratitude flickered there, but also pity, as if he knew she wasn't just speaking of him. The night dragged slow, endless. Every sound sharpened, the scuttle of rats through rubble, the drip of water from broken pipes, the shifting of boots against stone. Sleep never came. And just before dawn, Vale saw him again, the shadow with the pendant, watching from the ridge. For a moment the world went silent. No gunfire, no squad, just her and him, eyes locking across the distance. She froze, her hand hovered near the trigger, but she couldn't pull it. Not when she knew, not when her chest screamed what her voice couldn't. He saw her, he recognized her, his head tilted not with hostility but something else, something unfinished. Then, as the first light of morning broke, he disappeared into the haze. Vale's body trembled, not from fear, from the weight of truth pressing down at last. The man wasn't just alive. He was her brother. Dawn never really broke over the village, it seeped. A pale light crawled through the cracks of smoke and dust, washing stone walls in gray. For a squad that had spent the night pinned under fire, the new day should have brought relief. Instead, it dragged with unease. The men whispered as they cleaned rifles, their voices hoarse. Ammo was counted, water rationed. Every gesture was sharp, restless. The silence of the enemy gnawed at them worse than the bullets had. Vale sat apart, her back pressed to the crumbled arch of the old mosque. The locket rested in her palm, the chain looping through her fingers. She stared at it as though it could explain what she had seen, what she had felt when their eyes met. Her brother alive. The words beat against her skull, steady, merciless. She closed her eyes, and memory surged unbidden. The village had smelled of bread that day, of smoke from clay ovens. Children chased each other through narrow alleys, their laughter climbing the sun-baked walls. She had been younger then, hair tied back, knees scraped, hands busy helping her mother carry baskets. And he had been there, always just ahead. Her brother, tall for his age, quick to smile, reckless enough to make her furious and proud all at once. He carried sticks like rifles, marshaling the younger boys into battles that were more play than fight. He always won, of course. "Stay close," he would call when they darted through alleys. "If you fall behind, I won't come looking." But he always did, always found her, always laughed when she scowled, swore she could manage on her own. Until the night of fire. The memory struck like a hammer, so vivid she could smell the burning wood again, hear the screams. Flames licked the rooftops, turning familiar walls into prisons of heat and smoke. Soldiers stormed the village, their boots pounding, their shouts foreign and brutal. She remembered the grip of her brother's hand, pulling her through the chaos. Remembered stumbling, choking, the taste of ash in her mouth. "Don't let go," he had said. His voice cracked but steady, the only anchor she had. But then the wall collapsed, heat roared between them, his hand tore free. She had screamed until her throat broke, reaching, clawing against men who dragged her away. She saw him vanish into the fire, swallowed whole. She thought that was the end. Until last night. Vale's eyes snapped open, lungs burning as if smoke still lingered. Around her, the squad shifted restlessly. The sergeant cursed under his breath, trying to start a comm radio that only hissed static. The captain crouched near Vale, studying her in silence before speaking. "You don't look surprised by this place." Her jaw tightened. "I've been here before. During training." Her eyes flicked to him cold. "Before training." He waited, but she said no more. Instead, she rose, brushing dust from her knees, scanning rooftops where shadows still lingered. She couldn't tell them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because how could she? How could she explain that the enemy out there wasn't faceless, wasn't nameless, that the blood running in their veins was the same that ran in hers? The captain let it drop for now, but his stare followed her, sharp, suspicious. By midday, the heat pressed heavy, dragging sweat through uniforms. The squad split, securing supply caches, patching defenses. The sergeant limped on his bandaged leg, still cracking jokes he didn't believe in, trying to keep fear at bay. Vale walked the edge of the square, boots crunching gravel, eyes tracing every shadow. The village spoke to her in whispers only she could hear, the creak of old doors, the smell of earth after fire. Ghosts lived here, and they knew her name. She paused near a broken fountain, its basin dry, stone cracked. Her reflection shimmered faint in the water that had pooled from last night's rain. For a moment, she saw not her face but a child, smudged with ash, eyes wide with terror. Her brother's voice echoed, "Don't let go." Her hand trembled. She gripped the rifle tighter. "Hey," the sergeant's voice broke through, pulling her back. He limped toward her, sweat dripping down his temples. "You all right? You've been walking like you're chasing ghosts." She almost laughed, almost told him he was closer to the truth than he realized, but instead she shrugged. Ghosts are easier than the living. He frowned but didn't press. Maybe he recognized the kind of wounds words couldn't touch. By late afternoon, the enemy tested them again. A sharp burst of gunfire rattled from the ridge, then silence. A warning, not an attack. The squad froze, nerves stretched thin, waiting for the strike that never came. Vale raised her scope, scanning, and there he was again. Her brother, standing tall against the skyline, framed by the dying light. The pendant glinted once, a star that stabbed her chest. He didn't fire, didn't move, just watched. Their eyes locked across the distance, and time folded. She saw him not as the man silhouetted against the sun, but as the boy who once swore he'd never let her fall behind. Her lips parted, breath shallow. A word almost escaped his name. But then he turned, vanishing back into the ridge. Vale lowered her rifle slowly, her heart a drumbeat too loud. The captain's voice cut sharp, "You see something." She hesitated, then shook her head. Because what could she say? That the man stalking them, testing them, was her brother long thought dead. That her heart broke every time she saw him, alive yet unreachable. No, not yet. The night came again, heavy with silence. The squad huddled close, whispering plans of extraction, though no one believed rescue was coming. Vale sat apart once more, locket pressed to her chest, her eyes fixed on the darkness beyond. Her brother was out there, alive, watching, waiting. And for the first time in years, she wondered if the fire had truly taken him, or if something far worse had. The decision came not with shouting, but with silence. The captain spread a map across a broken crate, his finger tracing routes none of them wanted to follow. Extraction had gone quiet, reinforcements delayed, supplies dwindling. Every path out led deeper in. "We move at dawn," he said finally. His voice was steel, though his eyes betrayed doubt. The men shifted uneasily. No one argued. Arguments wasted energy. Vale stood in the shadows, listening. Her rifle slung across her shoulder, the locket hidden under her vest. She knew what deeper meant. Every step forward pressed them closer to the heart of the village, to the ridge where he waited. Her brother. She turned away before her thoughts showed on her face. That night no one slept. The air was thick, heavy with tension. The sergeant muttered jokes into the fire, but laughter died before it reached anyone's lips. One of the younger soldiers, barely 20, freckles still clinging to his cheeks, pulled out a worn photo of a girl. His fiancée, he said, waiting back home. The words shook as he spoke them. Vale watched him quietly. She remembered being that young once, before war hardened faces, before love became something too fragile to carry. For a moment, she wanted to tell him not to cling too tightly. But she didn't. Some illusions were lifelines. When dawn bled into the sky, pale and merciless, they moved. Boots on dirt, rifles raised, eyes never still. The village swallowed them in silence, alleys stretching like veins, walls closing in. Every doorway, every shattered window was a question with no answer. Vale led the left flank, eyes sweeping rooftops. The locket pressed against her skin with every step, as if reminding her of the truth she carried. She wondered if the others could hear her heart pounding. They reached the schoolhouse by midday, or what was left of it. Walls pocked with bullet holes, desks overturned, chalk still smeared across the board though no children had sat there in years. The air was heavy with dust and absence. The squad settled in, securing corners, clearing rooms. The sergeant dragged himself to a window, rifle resting, scanning the street. His face was gray with exhaustion, but his eyes stayed sharp. Vale wandered to the back of the classroom. Her fingers brushed a child's drawing pinned crooked on the wall, faded, almost erased. Two stick figures, a boy and a girl, holding hands, smiling. Her throat tightened. She turned away quickly. The captain found her there, his shadow stretched across the floor. "You've been different since last night," he said quietly. Not accusing, not yet, just weighing. Vale met his gaze, unflinching. "We've all been different since last night." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded, but she knew he didn't believe her. Hours dragged. Heat shimmered through broken windows. The young soldier with the photo tried to write a letter, his pencil scratching nervously across paper. The sergeant hummed low under his breath, a tune Vale didn't recognize, but one that sounded like something a man might sing to himself when he feared he wouldn't see another dawn. Then footsteps. Soft, barely there. Vale froze. The others stiffened, rifles raised. A shadow moved across the doorway. The captain signaled silence. The squad held breath, fingers on triggers. And then a sound, a voice, a whisper that carried through the dust-choked air like a ghost. Her name. Vale. Her blood turned to ice. The others didn't flinch. They hadn't heard it. Somehow, impossibly, it had been for her alone. Her chest rose and fell too quickly. She raised her rifle, scanning the doorway, but saw nothing. Empty, only silence pressing in again. The captain frowned, watching her, suspicion sharp as a blade. When night fell, the squad barricaded themselves inside. A single lantern flickered, shadows jumping across walls. Vale sat apart, fingers curled tight around the locket, her heart still echoing that impossible whisper. She remembered another night, years ago, hiding beneath the table while her parents argued in low, fearful voices. Her brother had crawled in beside her, grinning despite the fear. "They'll never take us," he'd whispered then. "Not you, not while I'm here." And she had believed him. With every fiber of her being, she had believed. Now, sitting in a ruin that smelled of dust and gun oil, she wondered what had broken him. What had turned the boy who swore to protect her into the man who stalked them from the shadows? The sergeant interrupted her thoughts, lowering himself to the floor beside her. His legs stiff, his face lined with pain. "You ever wonder what makes a man switch sides?" he asked softly, voice more to himself than to her. Vale's pulse stuttered. She said nothing. "Fear, money, maybe revenge," he chuckled dryly. "Guess we all got reasons, just some of us don't come back from M." He didn't look at her, didn't press, but she felt the weight of his words like a hand on her throat. Sleep never came, only fragments of memory, flashes of fire and screams, and always his eyes, watching. At dawn, gunfire erupted. Sharp, close. The windows shattered inward as rounds ripped through the walls. The squad dove for cover, returning fire blindly into the street. Vale pressed to the floor, heart hammering, ears ringing. Through the chaos, she saw him. Her brother. Standing at the far end of the alley, rifle slung but unused. His men fired, but he did not. His gaze locked on hers, steady, unshaken, almost pleading. She froze, time slowed. The captain shouted orders, men screamed, bullets snapped, but all Vale could see was him. Her hand trembled on the trigger. One squeeze, that's all it would take. End it, end him. But she couldn't. He raised his hand, just slightly, not in threat, in recognition. Then a grenade rolled through the window. Vale reacted before thought. She grabbed it, hurled it back, the blast shattering air and stone outside. Dust filled the room, ears ringing, men coughing. When it cleared, he was gone. The squad regrouped, shaken, one man wounded, the sergeant dragging him to cover. The captain's eyes cut to Vale, sharp as knives. "You hesitated," he said low, when the others weren't listening. Vale's stomach twisted. She said nothing. "Next time," he warned, voice like steel, "you won't." She turned away, because she couldn't promise him that. Not when the man he wanted her to kill was the boy who once held her hand through fire. That night, as the squad patched wounds and rationed ammo, Vale sat in silence. The locket pressed against her chest, heavier than ever. She knew the truth now. This wasn't just survival, wasn't just mission. It was choice. And every step forward dragged her closer to the moment she feared most, the moment she would have to choose between them. Between blood and brotherhood. The night was a cloak, but it did not comfort. The squad moved in silence, boots pressing carefully into dirt, rifles raised toward shadows that might hide anything. The air was cooler now, but every breath felt heavier, like the world itself was warning them to turn back. The ridge loomed ahead, jagged against the stars. Somewhere up there the enemy waited. Somewhere up there so did he. Vale's chest tightened with every step. Her heartbeat was steady but too loud in her ears. The locket under her vest tapped softly with her movement, as if reminding her what she carried, who she carried. The captain led them, eyes hard, jaw clenched. The sergeant limped behind, every step a silent battle he refused to lose. The younger soldier clutched his rifle like it was his only tether to home. No one spoke. No one dared. The higher they climbed, the darker it became. The moon slipped behind clouds, leaving only the thin red glow of distant fires to mark the path. The wind shifted, carrying the faintest trace of smoke, of dust, of something older. Vale paused once, crouching low, her hand brushing the dirt. Her fingertips came away blackened like ash. She stared at it for a beat too long, then forced herself forward. Halfway up, the captain signaled a halt. They crouched in the shadow of an outcrop, listening. A sound carried down the ridge. Not gunfire, not movement. A whistle, low, haunting, a tune that didn't belong to this war. Vale froze, her throat closed. She knew that sound. It was the tune her brother had whistled as a boy, leading her through the fields when they searched for lost goats. A signal between them, just theirs. Her breath caught. The sergeant frowned. "What the hell is that?" The captain raised his fist, signaling silence. But his eyes flicked toward Vale, catching the sharp way her body stiffened, the way her head tilted, listening. She forced her face blank, forced her lungs to breathe slow, but inside everything shook. The whistle faded, silence fell again. The squad moved on. By the time they reached the ridgeline, the night had grown suffocating. The air was thin, the rocks jagged, the climb relentless. They crawled into cover, scanning the valley below. It was empty, too empty. The captain's jaw tightened. "They're here," he murmured. Vale knew he was right. She could feel it, the weight of unseen eyes pressing against her skin. Minutes stretched, nothing moved. Then a voice. Not shouted, not mocking, calm, low. "Vale." Her name again. This time the others heard it. The squad stiffened. Rifles snapped toward the darkness. The young soldier cursed under his breath, fear sharp in his voice. The captain's gaze cut to her. "They know you." Her stomach dropped. Before she could answer, a figure stepped into the moonlight, slowly, deliberately. Her brother. Not a shadow this time, not a glimpse through scope or smoke. Him, flesh and blood, older, harder, but him. The pendant glinted at his chest, the same one their mother had given him. The squad's rifles trained on him instantly, safety clicks sharp in the night. But he didn't raise his weapon, didn't even reach for it. He only looked at her. Vale, he said again, her name a whisper, a memory, a plea. Her throat closed, the world around her dimmed. For a heartbeat there was no squad, no mission, no war, only him. She rose slowly, ignoring the captain's hissed warning. Her boots scraped rock. Her rifle hung useless at her side. They stared at each other across the space, the years collapsing between them. His face was lined, scarred, his eyes darker, heavier, but they were the same eyes that once pulled her through fire. Her lips parted, voice barely sound. I thought you were dead. Something flickered in his expression, pain, guilt, something unspoken. I was, he said. The words cut deeper than any blade. The squad tensed, fingers tightened on triggers. The captain's voice was low, sharp. Vale, step back. But she couldn't, not yet, not when the ghost she'd mourned was standing before her. Her brother's gaze shifted briefly to the rifles aimed at him, then back to her. You shouldn't be here, he said. Her chest heaved. Neither should you. The silence between them was thick, charged. The squad held their breath. Finally the captain barked, drop your weapon. Her brother didn't move. His eyes never left hers. Vale's hand trembled at her side. She could feel the squad's suspicion like a blade at her back. She could feel his plea in the space between them. Her voice cracked as she asked the question that had burned since the fire. Why? His jaw tightened. Shadows crossed his face. Because someone had to survive, someone had to fight back, and they gave me a choice. The captain cut in, furious. He's the enemy, Vale, don't listen to a word. But his words blurred. All she heard was her brother's voice, low, rough, carrying the weight of years lost. I never stopped looking for you, he said. Her eyes stung. The locket burned against her skin. Behind her the squad shifted. Tension snapped taut. One wrong breath and gunfire would end it all. Her brother raised his hand, slowly, empty, a gesture of peace. Vale's breath shuddered. She felt the captain's stare drilling into her, waiting for her to choose. And in that fragile, trembling moment, she realized there was no choice that wouldn't break her. The sergeant's voice cracked the silence. Captain, movement. Figures shifted in the darkness. Dozens. Her brother's men emerging from the ridge, weapons ready. The captain swore, snapping orders. Rifles turned, safeties clicked. Her brother's eyes widened. Go, he hissed at her, not a threat, a warning. The valley erupted in gunfire. Bullets ripped the night apart. The squad scattered for cover, muzzle flashes lighting stone walls. The sergeant dragged the younger soldier back as rounds sparked against rock. Vale dove low, dust choking her throat, ears ringing. Her rifle snapped up by instinct. Through the chaos, her eyes found him again, her brother. He wasn't shooting at them, not at her. His rifle barked toward the sky, toward shadows not hers. A signal, a cover, she couldn't tell. All she knew was that for one impossible heartbeat, they weren't enemies. They were blood. Then a grenade exploded nearby, shattering stone, showering them with dust and fire. Vale hit the ground hard, her vision spinning. When she looked up, he was gone. The ridge was chaos, screams and smoke and fire. The squad fought tooth and claw to hold ground, their breaths ragged, their eyes wide. Vale's chest heaved as she fired blindly into shadows, her heart torn, her mind screaming. Because for the first time, she knew the truth. He wasn't just alive, he wasn't just the enemy. He was trapped between both, and so was she. The ridge was behind them, but it didn't feel like victory. They stumbled down through the ravine at dawn, faces gray, uniforms torn, sweat and ash mixing into mud across their skin. The sergeant leaned heavily on Vale's shoulder, his injured leg dragging with each step. The young soldier carried 2 rifles now, his, and another that no longer had an owner. They had survived, but survival tasted like ash. The captain called a halt when the ravine widened into a dry riverbed. He gave no speech, no orders beyond the basics. Check ammo, check wounds, drink only half a mouthful of water. The men obeyed silently. Vale sank to the ground, rifle across her lap. Her hands shook despite her stillness. The locket pressed cold against her chest, heavier than ever. Her brother's voice still echoed in her ears. I never stopped looking for you. She wanted to believe it. God, she wanted to. But then the image of his men rising from the darkness came back, rifles aimed, grenades flying. If he hadn't ordered it, why hadn't he stopped it? Her head throbbed with questions. None had answers. The captain's shadow fell over her. He crouched low, eyes narrowed. You knew, he said flatly. Vale didn't answer. His voice hardened. He called your name, twice. Don't insult me by pretending you don't know who he is. The words cut through her like shrapnel. She forced her jaw tight, her eyes cold. I don't owe you answers, she said. His glare sharpened. You owe this squad the truth. Around them, the others shifted uneasily. The young soldier watched from the corner of his eye, fear and doubt mixing on his face. The sergeant just sat back, silent, his breath ragged, gaze turned toward the rocks as though listening but not interfering. Vale rose slowly, dust falling from her knees. The truth doesn't change the fact that I'm still here, fighting, same as you. The captain's voice lowered, but it was sharper for it. Until you're not. The space between them crackled. Finally, the sergeant spoke, his voice gravel. Enough, save it for the ones trying to kill us. The captain held Vale's gaze a beat longer, then turned away, but she knew. The doubt wasn't gone, it was growing. The march continued. The sun burned overhead, merciless. The riverbed offered no shade, only endless stone. Their canteens grew lighter, their steps heavier. By midday, every breath felt like swallowing sand. The young soldier stumbled once, nearly falling. Vale caught his arm, steadying him. You all right? She asked. His lips cracked as he tried to smile. Yeah, just never thought war would feel this quiet. Vale blinked, quiet. He nodded, breath ragged. Back home, when I thought of battle, I thought of noise, guns, shouting, but out here, it's the silence that kills. His voice trembled, but there was truth in it. Vale looked ahead at the barren expanse stretching to the horizon. He was right. The silence was worse than bullets. By evening, they found shelter in the remains of a farmhouse. Half a roof, cracked walls, but it was enough to keep the night wind off. They built no fire, ate no more than dry rations split too thin. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent. Vale sat alone against the wall, staring into the dark. The locket dangled in her hand, chain coiled like a question mark. The sergeant lowered himself beside her, groaning at his leg. He offered no preamble. He's your blood, isn't he? Her chest clenched. She didn't answer, but her silence was answer enough. The sergeant nodded slowly. Figured, the way you froze, the way he looked at you. Vale swallowed hard. If you tell the captain. He cut her off with a dry chuckle. The captain already knows, or he thinks he does. Question is what you're gonna do about it. Her throat tightened. What would you do? His eyes were tired, old. Doesn't matter. I buried my family years ago. You still got yours breathing. That changes things. She stared at him, heart twisting. You think I should go to him? The sergeant shook his head. I think whatever choice you make, it's gonna cost you. Silence stretched between them. The night wind whispered through broken beams. Finally, the sergeant sighed, leaning back. For what it's worth, I've seen you fight. You're solid. Doesn't matter who your brother is. To me, you've earned your place here. Vale's chest ached. She wanted to thank him, but the words stuck. Instead, she only nodded. The night dragged slow, every hour heavy. At some point she drifted into shallow sleep, haunted by fire, by whistles in the dark, by the sound of her brother's voice calling her name. When dawn came, they moved again. The farmhouse faded behind them. Ahead the land grew harsher, the ridge shadowing them like a specter. The squad's pace slowed, their breaths ragged, their eyes hollow. They were running out of strength, out of time. By midday, the young soldier collapsed. His legs gave out, his rifle clattering to the ground. Vale knelt beside him, pressing water to his lips. He shook his head weakly. "Save it." She frowned. "Don't be stupid. Drink." His cracked lips curved in something like a smile. "If I make it back, she'll kill me for not drinking. If I don't, least the rest of you might." Vale's throat burned. She forced the canteen to his mouth until he drank. The captain watched from a distance, his face unreadable. By nightfall they reached the base of another ridge, higher, sharper, their only path forward. They huddled in its shadow, too drained to climb until dawn. The men dozed in turns, rifles across their laps. Vale stayed awake, staring at the stars. And then she heard it. Soft, distant, a whistle. Her chest froze. She rose quietly, slipping from the group, boots silent on stone. The whistle came again, leading her toward the edge of the ridge. And there he was. Her brother standing in shadow, eyes catching the faint starlight, alone. Vale's heart pounded. She should have raised her rifle, should have called the squad. Instead, she stepped closer. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he whispered, "You shouldn't be with them." Her voice cracked, "And you shouldn't be here at all." His jaw tightened. "I stayed because of you." Her throat ached. "By joining them." He flinched but didn't look away. "I didn't choose this war, it chose me, same as it chose you." The silence between them was heavy, charged. Finally he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Come with me, leave them before it's too late." Her chest seized. Behind her the squad slept. Broken, battered, loyal. Ahead of her stood blood, a piece of her childhood. Her brother's hand reached out. Vale's fingers twitched toward the locket. She didn't answer, couldn't. His eyes searched hers, desperate, pleading. "If you stay with them, you'll die. If you come with me, you'll live. We'll both live." The wind whispered through the rocks. Her heart hammered. At last she spoke. "I can't." The words shattered something between them. His hand fell, his face hardened, eyes darkening. "Then you've already chosen." Before she could answer, he vanished into the shadows, leaving her alone under the stars. Vale's knees weakened. She pressed her hand against the locket, trembling. She knew now, the final reckoning was coming, and when it did, there would be no walking away unbroken. At dawn, the ridge loomed like judgment. Its jagged edge tore against the sky, dark against pale light. The squad gathered at its base, shadows long, faces drawn. No one spoke. Every man knew what it meant, one last climb, one last chance to break through before their strength gave out entirely. Vale adjusted the strap of her rifle, fingers trembling though she forced them still. The locket pressed against her chest, cold, sharp, unrelenting. She had not told them what happened in the night, that he had come, that he had asked, that she had refused. The captain's voice cut through the silence. "We move." The climb was agony. Hands scraped raw against stone. Boots slipped, knees buckled, muscles screamed. The sergeant's leg nearly gave out twice, but he gritted his teeth, refusing help. The young soldier clung to the rocks, sweat dripping into his eyes, whispering prayers under his breath. Vale climbed steady, jaw clenched, every motion mechanical, but inside she was unraveling. At the ridge top, the land opened wide, a stretch of barren earth sloping into shadow, where enemy fortifications crouched like beasts. Smoke curled from dugouts. A watchtower jutted crooked against the horizon. The captain crouched low, scanning. He raised his fist, halting them. And then the crack of a rifle split the morning. Dirt spat up beside Vale's hand. Another shot rang out closer. The squad dove to cover. Snipers hidden, waiting. The sergeant cursed, dragging himself behind a boulder. The young soldier scrambled after him, wide-eyed, heart hammering loud enough for Vale to hear. The captain shouted over the chaos, "They know we're here, move." The squad broke into motion, sprinting low across open ground, rifles barking, dirt flying. Vale ran with them, lungs burning, every step a gamble. Bullets snapped past, whining through the air. One soldier went down with a cry, clutching his chest. The young soldier froze, staring, until Vale yanked him forward, dragging him on. They dove into a shallow ditch, panting. The world roared with gunfire, smoke, shouts. And then, through it all, she heard it. A whistle. Her blood turned cold. Vale's head snapped up. Across the smoke and stone she saw him, her brother, standing tall above the trench line, rifle lowered, eyes locked on hers. Time slowed. He wasn't firing. Neither were his men. For one suspended heartbeat, the battlefield hushed between them, as if the war itself waited. Her squad fired on, blind to the moment. The captain barked orders, dragging the men forward. But Vale couldn't move. Her brother raised his hand, not in threat, in call, in plea. Her chest clenched. The locket burned against her skin. Childhood laughter, quiet fields, the day he left and didn't come back. And now here. Her brother's lips moved. She couldn't hear, but she knew the word. Come. The world pressed in. The smoke, the cries, the sergeant's ragged breathing, the young soldier's terror, the captain's command. And her brother. Blood. Her heart fractured. Every choice led to loss, to silence, to ghosts. She rose slowly from the ditch, rifle in her hands. The captain shouted her name, but it blurred. The squad's voices dulled. The gunfire thinned to a pulse in her ears. Her brother's eyes lit with something like hope. Vale's finger tightened on the trigger. For a breath, nothing. Then the rifle kicked against her shoulder. Her brother staggered, eyes wide, shock, hurt, betrayal. He fell. The world snapped back loud. Shouts, screams, bullets tearing air. Vale's knees nearly buckled, but she forced herself down into the ditch, hands shaking, heart breaking. The captain's glare seared her, but he said nothing, not now. The squad surged forward, rage and grief mingling, firing through smoke, storming the trench. Vale followed, numb, every step heavy. The fight was brutal. Mud, blood, the screams of men who wanted to live. The sergeant limped but struck hard, rifle butt cracking skull. The young soldier's hands trembled on his trigger, tears streaking his face even as he fired. Vale moved through it like a shadow, her rifle precise, her body automatic. But her heart was elsewhere, back on the ridge, with the body that bore her blood. At last, silence. The trench was theirs, the enemy scattered or dead. Smoke curled from rifles cooling in hands too tired to grip. The captain stood tall, chest heaving. His eyes swept the survivors. The count was fewer than before, always fewer. Vale leaned against the trench wall, rifle slipping from her grip. She slid down to sit in the mud, breath shaking, sweat streaking through dirt on her face. The locket pressed against her, heavy, punishing. The young soldier sank beside her, hands trembling. He didn't look at her, didn't have to. They all knew what she had done. The sergeant's shadow fell across her. His gaze was unreadable, but his voice was steady. You chose. Her eyes burned. She blinked hard, staring at the dirt, unable to speak. The sergeant lowered himself beside her with a groan, his injured leg stiff. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands, drew deep, exhaled slow. Doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, he said softly. You'll carry it for the rest of your life. That's the price. She turned her face, tears slipping hot and silent down her cheeks. The young soldier's whisper cut through. Was he? Vale's throat closed. She couldn't say it. Wouldn't. The word would make it too real. Instead, she clutched the locket, chain digging into her palm, eyes burning holes into the smoke above. The captain called the men to move. They would push on, always on, because that was war. But Vale didn't rise at first. She sat a moment longer, letting the silence weigh. Her brother's face lingered in her mind, not as he fell, not in betrayal, but years before. Smiling, calling her name as they ran across fields unbroken by war. That image hurt most of all. At last she rose, picked up her rifle, joined the line. They marched on into the haze, into another dawn, into another fight that would leave more of them behind. Vale said nothing. She would never speak of what she had done, not to the squad, not to command, not to anyone. Her brother's name would be buried with him, in silence. Because some wounds could not be shared, some truths could not be told. As the horizon bled with the rising sun, Vale touched the locket once more, pressing it hard against her chest. And in the hollow beat of her heart, a thought came, quiet, bitter, but steady. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. The wind carried the smoke away, the silence lingered, and in that silence she walked on.